Angelina Jolie was surrounded by Hollywood from a young age and had her first film role in a film when she was just 7 years old. It was almost impossible for her to go down any other line of work. It's as though it were predestined. Her debut was 1982's Lookin' to Get Out alongside her father, Jon Voight. But just because this was her debut does not mean that it was particularly successful or that the years leading up to it and beyond were blissful. She had a troubled home life. Her father left the family when she was just a year old, and she's long had a troubled, shall we say, relationship with him. Rather, she credited her mother, Marsha Lynn Bertrand, for getting her into film. Bertrand was an actress herself, but focused on her children as opposed to pursuing her career. For a while, Jolie did try different things. Modeling, which did not work out at the time, as well as taking embalming classes because she thought she might become a funeral director. Modeling eventually panned out, but becoming a funeral director didn't. By the time she had graduated from high school, she had decided to pursue acting yet again. The early years were not easy for her. Jolie struggled with insomnia and an eating disorder and began using drugs. There's a story about her hiring a hitman to take her out, but instead the hitman told her to think about it for a while and call again in a few months if she still felt the same way. How true is that? No idea. Then again, she did say it in a public interview with The Face. After she graduated, she committed herself to acting. She started appearing in student films that her brother, James Haven, directed while attending the USC School of Cinema Television, as well as in music videos. At this time, she had a less strained relationship with her father and watched how he would work. In 1993, she had her first real film role in the direct-to-video Cyborg 2, where she played the cyborg. She didn't like the movie, saying that after seeing the completed film, she, quote, went home and got sick, end quote. Ouch. Wisely or not, she didn't appear in another feature film until 1995. This was What Else? Hackers, which, despite performing poorly both critically and commercially, has gained a cult following since. Roger Ebert gave it a decent review and said that as long as you took the computer stuff about as seriously as you took the archaeological stuff in Indiana Jones, which is to say not very seriously at all, that is an enjoyable film. At the very least, I think the movie inspired a lot of people to get interested in tech from a young age, despite some parts of it not being terribly realistic. Still, Hackers was her breakthrough, and since Jolie has only had a handful of years where she hasn't appeared in a film. That said, many of her early films were commercial, if not critical flops. It wasn't until 1997's TV film, George Wallace, that her star really began to shine. She played George Wallace's second wife, Cornelia Wallace, and won a Golden Globe for Best Supporting Actress. She won another for 1998's Gia, an HBO film that won critical acclaim and showed people that Jolie was, in fact, a serious actress. The back-to-back wins helped Jolie settle on acting as her career. Her most important role before the end of the decade was 1999's Girl, Interrupted. The film had mixed reviews and likely failed to earn its money back at the box office, but it won Jolie, who gave an intense performance, an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress, as well as another Golden Globe. Her films didn't perform particularly well at the box office despite sometimes getting decent reviews and her performances more often than not being praised. Up until this point, the only movie that probably made its money back was 1999's The Bone Collector, where she starred alongside Denzel Washington. But 2000's Gone in 60 Seconds, where she acted alongside Nicolas Cage, was a huge success. It was her first blockbuster. The same was the case for 2001's Lara Croft Tomb Raider. This is where Jolie started to gain worldwide recognition, despite the movie getting mostly negative reviews. Jolie's career, like most actors and actresses, is marked by ups and downs. Jolie's career is interesting because she had a long string of downs followed by a long string of ups. Starting with 2001's Original Sin and up through 2008's Kung Fu Panda, most of her films were poorly received, critically and commercially. That's 7 years. But during these 7 years, her star just kept rising. It's impressive when you look at it. Across 14 films, 8 made more than their budget. But making more than your budget does not mean that the movie made money. In fact, most of them barely made more than their budget, and only 2, Shark Tale and Mr. and Mrs. Smith, made 2.5 times their budget. That 2.5 times multiplier is important. It's a rule of thumb that if a movie makes at least 2.5 times its budget, then that movie probably at least broke even. So basically, if a movie was made on a budget of $100 million, it should make at least $250 million in order to not be considered a flop. 2 out of 14 is not a good record by any means. Similarly, 3 out of 14 had better than mixed reviews: Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow, A Mighty Heart, and Beowulf. Mr. and Mrs. Smith was a bit of a turning point for her though. She acted opposite Brad Pitt, who she had a storied romance with. The couple was dubbed Brangelina and made for popular tabloid fodder. It would be her highest grossing live-action film for close to a decade. By this point, Jolie was already one of the highest paid, if not the highest paid, women in Hollywood, raking in $10 million plus per film, plus points on the back end. Starting with 2008's Kung Fu Panda though, she overturned her previous string of flops into a glorious string of successes that really only came to an end because of the pandemic. Kung Fu Panda, Wanted, Changeling, Salt, The Tourist, Kung Fu Panda 2, Maleficent, Kung Fu Panda 3, and Maleficent Mistress of Evil. Her only acting effort that didn't do well at this time, either critically or commercially, was 2015's By the Sea, which she directed, wrote, produced, and acted in. This is as good a time as any to highlight Jolie's foray into directing. She's only directed 5 films thus far, with a 6th one on the way. A Place in Time was a small documentary and her first attempt in 2007. In the Land of Blood and Honey was a 2011 war film that got mixed reviews. Unbroken, released in 2014, got mixed reviews as well, but performed well at the box office. Her latest effort, about the Khmer Rouge, was positively received. As she's taken on fewer acting roles, she's stepped up her humanitarian efforts. Part of that can be seen through her directorial efforts, which often include themes of war. Her humanitarian efforts started in 2001 after she spent time in Cambodia while filming Tomb Raider. She became a UNHCR ambassador and began visiting refugee camps in Sierra Leone, Tanzania, Cambodia, Pakistan, Sudan, Afghanistan, and elsewhere. She put her money where her mouth was too, donating $1 million to UNHCR, their largest donation from a private individual, as well as covering all of her own costs. All told, she went on more than 40 missions, visiting dozens of countries before stepping down as ambassador in December 2022 in order to engage directly with more on-the-ground organizations. Over the years, she added other efforts as well: human rights and women's rights in various countries, conservation efforts in Cambodia, Kenya, and Namibia, and child immigration and education efforts through organizations like the Malala Fund. Again, she put up her own money. Since 2013, all proceeds from her Style of Jolie jewelry collection have gone to charities for helping children get educated, and has helped set up schools across the world. She related these humanitarian efforts directly to her early years as a wild child. Quote, "In my early 20s, I was fighting with myself. Now, I take that punk in me to Washington, and I fight for something important." End quote. That tracks with the perception of her. Starting in her mid-20s, which is when she began getting deeply involved with humanitarian work, her public image began to improve. With others, it might seem like an affect, but she's been doing the humanitarian work consistently for so long that it's difficult to believe that it's not something that she cares deeply about. Angelina Jolie has had a remarkable career and impact, and she's not even 50 yet. I'm interested to see how much more she does. If what we've seen so far is anything to go by, it's fair to say we can still expect a lot.